Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Alicia. Welcome to the family. Today we're going to be talking about the books that I read in July. Now this is not going to be an extensive list of the books that I read. I did do a recent wrap up in early July, which did include, oh sorry, my contact is like freaking out. So I did do a recent wrap up video, which I will link up in the cards and down below in the description box of other books that I did end up reading in July. I'm just going to talk about the rest of the books that I ended up reading that didn't get mentioned during that video because I hadn't yet picked them up. Sorry, my contact is still freaking out. I recently got contacts. It's my first time ever getting them. I've been wearing glasses for like the past 10 years and all of a sudden I decided to try contacts because I go snowboarding. And when I go snowboarding, I can't wear my glasses under my goggles and I can't see anything. So I told myself, just get contacts this year. So I did, and I basically only use them for snowboarding, but I have so many. I have the daily ones that I need to use them up. So I'm trying to use them a little bit more. So please excuse my eye freaking out right now. But yes, I'm really excited because we do have quite an array of books from thriller to YA, fantasy, sci-fi. So yeah, without any further ado, let's get right into the video. So I'm just gonna talk about these books in the order that I read them. And I do have to say that the second half of July was a pretty good reading month for me. All of these books I'm going to mention were 4 stars with the exception of one 5-star read. But yeah, I had a really good reading month, so I'm really excited. So let's start off with Take a Hint, Dani Brown by Talia Hibbert. This is the second book in the Brown Sisters series. Is it a series? Well, you can read them in any order that you want. You don't have to read the first one, which is what I did. So I put the first 2 on hold through Libby, and this is the one that I ended up getting first. So I did start off with Take a Hint, Dani Brown, but I am currently listening to Get a Life, Chloe Brown, so you will hear about it during my August wrap up. I ended up giving this book 4 out of 5 stars, and it's a friends to lovers romance. It was really charming, it was really sweet, it was very spicy, and I just love Dani as a character. She is hilarious, she is strong, she is bold, she is sassy. I loved everything about her, and I love everything about the relationship dynamic. Now, as many of you know, I am not a big romance reader, but this is a book that really got me. Like, I really loved it, and it's one that I would actually reread. I've been trying to read more romance for the past couple of months, actually, and I haven't really had much luck, but this is one that just grabbed me. The only other romance book that I've read that I can think of that I loved is The Kiss Quotient, and I'm just glad that I'm finally finding romance books that I love. So in case you don't know what this book is about, we follow Danica Brown, and she is super career focused. That is her primary goal, and because of this, she has commitment issues. Her relationships in the past haven't really worked out. A lot of people that she dated in the past don't really understand this drive that she has towards academic and professional success, and they sort of end up getting tired of her not being around. So because of this, she does develop commitment issues because she thinks that she'll never really meet anybody's expectations of what a relationship should be like. So instead, Dani is looking for, friends with benefits. She's looking for occasional hookups. She's not really looking for anything serious or anything long term. At the place that she works, she has a friend called Saphir, and during this fire drill, he ends up quote unquote saving her, and he ends up carrying her out of the building, and this is recorded by some people on campus. It goes viral, and because of this video going viral, this nonprofit that Saphir is spearheading starts to get traction and attention. So he goes to Dani and he's like, hey, I know we're just friends, but what if we pretend to date? How would you like that? And Dani's like, oh yeah, okay, yes, let's do it. And so Dani agrees, and she does have ulterior motives. She wants to go ahead and seduce Saphir so that she has, a friends with benefits situation going on. But of course, they end up, falling for each other. And it's just super sweet, super charming, and I enjoyed every second of it. If you haven't picked it up yet, I would highly recommend. And this is coming from someone who is not a romance reader. The next book on this list is All Systems Red, and this is by Martha Wells. And this is the first novella and the introduction to the Murderbot Diaries. So essentially in this novella, we follow this socially awkward security bot or sec unit who calls himself Murderbot. He doesn't like interacting with humans. He is very shy, and all he wants to do is basically to be left alone so that he can watch TV. So this novella is set in a corporate dominated spacefaring future, and Murderbot is essentially assigned to this exploratory team who is conducting a bunch of tests on the surface of this planet. There is one other exploratory team who is also based on this planet, and all of a sudden they go dark. So the team that Murderbot is on decides to go investigate to see what happens, and they find everybody at the scene dead. So now this sort of turns into a mystery, trying to figure out who killed them, are they in danger, and how do they get out of this situation. And because of this, Murderbot is placed in a situation where he has to interact with humans a lot more. So this is a very short novella. It's very fun, very fast paced, and I thoroughly enjoyed my read of it. Once the action got started, I couldn't put it down. I stayed up all night reading it. It only took me, I think, 2 to 3 hours to read the entire novella. It was really fun, really fast paced, super quick, and really funny. The only reason I didn't give it 5 stars, and the one issue that I had with it, is that there was some pacing issues. I don't know if anybody else noticed this, but sometimes it felt like there were these moments that were happening and it took, I don't know, 10, 20 pages to get through it, and all of a sudden there were these shifts where a couple of days happened, or, you know, a few hours happened, and we only dedicate 1 page to 2 pages to those events. There were some progression points that happened where I felt like it kind of just jumped, and the reader didn't really get to see what happened in between. And maybe that was just an issue that I had, but I just felt like there were some points where it kind of jumped and I felt like the timing was a bit off. I don't know if anybody else experienced this. If you did, please let me know. The next book on this list was Lock Every Door, and this is by Riley Sager. And this was actually the second book that I did read by Riley Sager. I did actually just finish The Last Time I Lied, but I won't be talking about it during this video. I will talk about it in my August wrap-up, since that is when I finished it, and I've also read Home Before Dark. So Lock Every Door is my second favorite by Riley Sager, with Home Before Dark being my favorite. So in Lock Every Door, we have our main character who's named Jules, and she was recently heartbroken. The guy she was seeing ended up cheating on her, and so all of a sudden she has to leave the apartment and she has to find a new place to stay. She doesn't really have family to rely on, and she's sort of in between jobs, and so she runs into this almost too good to be true opportunity to be an apartment sitter, where she would get paid $1,000 a week to apartment sit this unit in a building called the Bartholomew, and it's this very mysterious and high profile building. So again, a little bit too good to be true, right? But Jules is desperate. She needs the money, she needs a place to stay, so she ends up accepting the offer. But there's all these weird rules, like you can't take pictures inside of the building, you can't post on social media, you can't tell anyone that you're living there, and you definitely can't have guests over. And even though it's kind of weird, the building manager explains that there's some high profile people living here, right? And they don't want their privacy to be invaded. So Jules is like, you know, yeah, that's totally reasonable. So she ends up becoming the apartment sitter, and she meets another apartment sitter who is taking care of the unit right below her. And all of a sudden this apartment sitter goes missing, and Jules starts to think that this isn't a coincidence. She's been told that the apartment sitter just up and left and moved out. That doesn't really sit well with her because she got to know the apartment sitter a little bit, and she knows that this is something her friend wouldn't do. So Jules starts to track down this apartment sitter to see if there's anything nefarious going on. It was definitely a book to me that got more interesting as I started reading it. I know some people have complained about the ending. I didn't have a problem with the ending. I thought it was a creative way to end the book. I really enjoyed Jules as her main character, even though there was times that I kind of wanted to shake her a little bit. I really liked the atmosphere and the setting, and I ended up giving this book a 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. It was fun, it was fast, it was a good read. The next book that I ended up finishing in the month of July was The Alloy of Law, and this is the 4th Mistborn book. It's technically a spin-off. We are no longer in that dark, ash-ridden world. This new trilogy has a more steampunk / western vibe, and it also feels lighter. I feel like Mistborn felt very dark and very heavy at times, but this one felt a little bit more lighter and a little bit more fun, even though it still has those very important themes embedded throughout of it. I think my favorite part about this book was our main character duo, Wax and Wayne. I love the banter between them. They are best friends and they're crime fighters, like law bringers. A really fun dynamic duo. Really enjoyed this one. So in The Alloy of Law, we follow Wax, who is a retired law bringer. Right after his uncle died, he has to take up his old position as a lord and basically take care of all the people who depend on him. And so he puts his crime fighting days away and, you know, starts to become a gentleman. He's engaged to be married and he's trying to fix his image in front of high society. But in the city that he's in, there's these series of crimes that have been happening and he becomes really intrigued by them. Then when his fiance is taken as a hostage, he starts to investigate more deeply with his partner Wayne. I think this is a common trend with a lot of the books that I read this month, but they were very fast, very fun to read, very engaging read. Once I picked it up, again, I couldn't put it back down and I can't wait to continue on with the series. If you haven't read Mistborn Era 1, I wouldn't recommend to pick this one up. I mean, unless you want to be spoiled, right? You definitely don't need to read Mistborn Era 1 to jump into Era 2, but there's a lot of references that are made during this book to the Era 1 books and to their characters, and there's actually a character from Era 1 that appears in Era 2. So definitely would recommend to read Era 1 first before jumping into this one. Now, if you don't care to be spoiled, or if you just want the, you know, Western / steampunk vibe, you can totally go ahead and jump into this one. But again, I would still recommend to just jump into Era 1 first and then move on to this one. The next book that I ended up finishing in July is The House on Mango Street, and I actually ended up reading this book in Spanish. I do have the Spanish version of this book, and honestly, I can't believe that it took me so long to read this book. I remember reading Women Hollering Creek back in high school, and I love Sandra Cisneros' writing. I love the way that she portrayed characters, and I love that she gave voices, you know, to Latinx women in America. So I don't know why it took me so long to pick up The House on Mango Street, but I'm glad I finally did. It was very short, but very impactful and very poetic. I think I mentioned this during my Goodreads review, but several times during my reading experience, it felt like I was reading about a memory of myself, which is really nice because often when I read books, I can't really see myself represented in the book. So it felt nice to for once be like, wow, okay, yeah, this could totally be me. Like this book, this passage could be about me. So it was really nice to sort of experience that. Again, it's super short. I think it's like 110 pages. This book is a coming of age story about our main character, Esperanza Cordero. She is a Latinx girl who is growing up in Chicago. It talks about her struggles, her grief, her joy. It was just nice to see parts of myself represented in Esperanza. I don't know, it gave me a lot of joy to be able to see that, and there were parts of it that really hit home to me, and a lot of the struggles that Esperanza experienced, I also experienced as a girl, so it was just nice to see that. One thing I will say that is unique is that it's told as a series of vignettes. One of my favorite books of all time is In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado, and that is also told in a series of vignettes. I don't know, there's something about the way that the vignettes are structured in The House of Mango Street that, which is sort of add to this like experience of like looking from the outside in, but still a very deep and personal look at Esperanza's life and at the people that she talks about and the people in her life. Hey there, so this is Editing Alicia, and I just wanted to bring up something that I didn't mention during the actual review. So I stand by everything I said about The House on Mango Street. It was my first time reading it and I really enjoyed it. It was a very short and very insightful read. Just something that I've been thinking about over the last couple of weeks after I read it is that even though it is a classic in Chicano X-Lit, even though it is a very important coming of age story that centers a Latina living in the United States, which during the time of its publication wasn't, you know, widely available, I think for current times and reading it now, there were parts of it where I cringed a little bit because certain parts of the book feel a little bit outdated. There's some trigger warnings to keep in mind since it does have some outdated views. You know, there's some mentions around colorism and there's some homophobia in there. So I just wanted to bring that up, that even though I think this is an important book to sort of have under your belt, I also think it's important to read more contemporary and current Chicana and Chicano writers. So another thing that I briefly wanted to point out, and that's something that's definitely changing now but wasn't really changing back then, is that the literature that's sold widely and that was widely distributed is literature that focuses on pain and suffrage of minorities, right? And so this book also contains a little bit of that. So Again, I wouldn't not recommend you to pick it up. I think it's an important book, but also pick up books that also show the joy of the Latino and Latina community, and also that shows not just their struggles, but their successes, because we are not a monolith, and we don't all experience pain. We are very complex people, and we can experience all colors of the rainbow, and we can experience all emotions. So I just wanted to point that out because I didn't really talk about it during my review. Anyways, back to the past. Okay, so the next book on this list that I ended up reading is Ace of Spades, and I also ended up giving this book a 4 out of 5 stars. This is a YA mystery slash psychological thriller. So before I picked up this book, it was described to me as Get Out meets Gossip Girl, which I think is a pretty accurate way to describe this book. I would say that the first half of this book is more like Gossip Girl, but also like a younger version of Gossip Girl, if that makes sense. Or I don't know if it's just me getting older, but the first part of the book felt very like high school drama-ish and very Gossip Girl-like. And then the second half of the book is more along the lines of Get Out, but it also takes a more sinister spin. But really at its core, this book is about how pervasive racism can be. And so I think that describing this book as only a Get Out slash Gossip Girl type of book doesn't do it justice, because this book does have a lot more to say about racism in our modern society and how embedded it can be in every part of our lives. So for a brief synopsis of this book, we essentially follow our two main characters, and this is told in alternating timelines. We have Chiamaka and Devin, who both go to this very elite high school called Nivea's Private Academy, I believe. And Chiamaka, is your typical straight A student. She is someone who wants to succeed. She's someone who doesn't take no for an answer. She's someone that fights for what she wants, and she is always on top of her shit. On the other hand, we have Devon, and he is going to this school, and he got admitted to the school on a scholarship because his family can't afford to pay the enrollment fees for this private high school. And he's someone that sort of cruise below the radar. He's someone, that doesn't have too many friends, and he's not very well known, but he's very passionate about music, and he wants to go to Juilliard. And then all of a sudden, their senior year comes someone named Ace. Well, we don't know who Ace is. All we know is that they are sending mass texts to everybody. And at first it seems like they're not targeting anyone in particular. But, as the book goes on, we start to realize that maybe Chiamaka and Devin are the true targets of Ace, and that Ace's intentions are more harmful than they first appear. And so it takes on this mystery aspect as Chiamaka and Devin sort of team up, even though they are completely different, to try to figure out who is trying to harm them. Again, similar to other books, I thought it was a really fun and really fast read, but I also really loved the development of Chiamaka and Devin, and how they were very nuanced characters, and how the book overall ended on this very positive note. So yeah, if you haven't checked it out, and if you like YA mystery thrillers, this is one that I think would be a fun read. Okay, y'all, this is the last book that I ended up reading in the month of July, and I don't even know how to talk about it. I don't really know how to put into words the love I have for this book, or just the love that I have for 5-star reads. For some reason, the books that I love the most and the books that I give 5 stars to are also the books that I have the most difficulty talking about. I don't know why. But this was The Firekeeper's Daughters by Angeline Booley, and this book was everything. It just had everything that I love. It was fast paced, it was fun to read, but it was also educational. There's so many things that I learned from this book, and our main character, Dani, is just fantastic. She's equally this like badass, strong female character, but she also deeply cares about her community, and she's smart, and she's present, and she was just everything to me, and I loved her. I do have to give a couple of trigger warnings if you plan on picking up this book, namely drug abuse, murder, sexual assault, addiction, and racism. There's a couple more. This book touches on a lot of different things, so if you're someone that does get triggered, please do look up the trigger warnings, because there are a lot of them. So The Firekeeper's Daughter just really caught me by surprise. I ended up picking it up because Charmaine ended up picking this book up and she told me she loved it. So, I was like, if Charmaine loves it, I'm probably gonna love it. So I did, and I was honestly surprised because lately the young adult books that I've been reading, I haven't really been loving. Like, I enjoy them and I think they're fun, but I haven't really been loving them, and so I ended up loving this one. So to give you a brief synopsis, in this book we follow Donis, who has never really fit in anywhere, and not at home with her family, but she also hasn't fit in the nearby Ojibwe reservation, and so she's sort of struggling with her identity and how she fits into this world and even where her alliances lie. But she's really passionate about medicine and about healing through botanical methods, and she decides to sort of put her life on hold when her mom is sick, and so she's spending a lot of time with her family in the Ojibwe reservation. And there's this new hog guy who ends up coming to the reservation. He's a hockey player, and so she ends up being the person that shows this new guy around. And so, her summer is getting off to a good start. She's hanging out with her family, with her best friend. She met this new guy who she might have feelings for, but then all of a sudden she witnesses a murder, and Donis becomes aware of corruption that is plaguing her community. Someone is funneling drugs through her community and putting the youth there at risk, and so she does decide to go undercover as an informant for the police because she is very knowledgeable on her tribe's medicinal practices, and it looks like some of the drugs that are being made also have some sort of Ojibwe medicinal product. So she decides to go undercover for them while also doing her own investigation on the side because she doesn't really quite trust the police. This book really revolves around Native American culture and history, particularly the Ojibwe and the Anishinaabe tribe. This book also sheds light into the issues that these communities face and the deep-seated racism that they experience as well. I also thought this book was the perfect length. It is a little bit longer than most young adult books that I've read, but I really think it needed to be this long in order to give depth to the characters and to really speak about all the cultural and historical aspects of the book, as well as give a resolution to the overall arc. And that was another thing that I really loved, the ending. I wish this was a spoiler video because I would talk about it more, but just the way that it ends and the way that everything comes together, it's just, it was fantastic. There's one book from this video that I would recommend to pick up. It would be The Firekeeper's Daughter. So those were all of the books that I ended up reading in the month of July. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to support me, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you made it this far, leave a fire emoji down below. I hope you are all doing well, and I will see you on the next one. Bye!
Sigo cruzando ríos.